So the introduction that we're going to start on is the introduction of a new hardware appliance from Spectra Logic. That's a whole lot more than just hardware. It is a lot of the intelligence that we're building in to take advantage of the deep storage platform. The product name is BlackPearl. And BlackPearl, going with the theme of our products, you can see we're kind of a colorful company in the names of our products, the way we harass some of the folks who attend and sit in the second row, those types of things. And what I'm going to be telling you about is really the magic of how Spectra Logic is going to be taking advantage of DS3 in the short term. So DS3 is a great new interface to tape storage. It's the only RESTful interface to tape storage. But we also have talked about that you need to be able to have client applications to move data in and out of these RESTful interfaces. So what you're going to be really hearing about the rest of this afternoon is that's great that Spectra's introduced the deep storage extension to the standard S3 protocol. How are people really going to use it? And that's really what this afternoon is going to be about. So looking at BlackPearl, and sorry, go back. I was trying to get out of the way. Go back one slide. I'll go like this. One more photo op here.
Thank you.
You bet. So looking at how data gets into the data center and how specifically data gets to DS3, you have your data creation environment. In these environments, as we've been talking about, deep storage really becomes economical around maybe 200 terabytes, give or take a little bit. But if you look at the cost of low-cost disk and look at other options out there, certainly deep storage works with a smaller environment. There's nothing technologically that wouldn't make you use it. However, you start to really get the advantages of deep storage as you get to larger environments. So data creation from the data center is coming off a box of servers of some sort. And you use a client software package to be able to move data to DS3. That client software is the piece that we talked about earlier today, that in a RESTful architecture, there's two pieces. There's the client and there's the server. We're going to talk about clients more later in the day, so just assume that this piece here, we're going to fill in more on in about an hour. That client software moves data into the DS3 interface, which we introduced this morning. The BlackPearl appliance is the server. So Spectra Logic is introducing the hardware technology to be the DS3 server. This BlackPearl appliance does a lot of really clever stuff. So we're excited about the interface. We're really excited about what Spectra Logic has been able to build into the BlackPearl appliance.
Why are you announcing the server separately from the interface?
So the question is, why are we announcing a server separate from the interface? And the reason is the interface ultimately is a set of commands that we expect will broadly become adopted by lots of companies and lots of folks will use it. That's really a command set that we can't own, but it's necessary to get to the server technology. So BlackPearl is really Spectra's IP in this. The DS3 is an enabler to our IP.
You can't own REST.
You can't own REST. Yep, that's a good way to put it, John. So with BlackPearl, and I'm not going to go through the specifics of the intelligence, Dave is going to do that since he's the one who built it. So just to have you understand within the data center where BlackPearl fits is client software is writing to BlackPearl. BlackPearl does clever things, which Dave is going to cover, that ultimately lead to objects moving to deep storage. So when a customer wants to implement DS3, they have this new command set to take advantage of. And then, if they want to take advantage of a lot of the other functionality, you have BlackPearl. So with looking at how does this, what is the impact within the data center of introducing the deep storage solutions with BlackPearl combined with a tape library? What we really wanted to give you is precisely what are the economics of deep storage with the interface, with the BlackPearl technology we're adding, where a customer can write to a DS3 interface, and now they can be storing deep storage as an alternative or in addition to how they store data today. And to be fair, we decided to compare against our own product. That way there's no banter about what price are people buying at. And so we're using the list pricing, so list pricing of N-Tier Verde, which is designed to be low-cost NAS storage, which we sell at 45 cents a gig list. Good price. It's been adopted well in the market as we've brought this product out over the last 5 or 6 months. We found that this is a cost-effective, good price for NAS storage in the industry. When you add in BlackPearl technology with our tape libraries, you can have a couple of different price points that depend on the capacity of the solution. As with most things, the more capacity you put in the system, the lower the cost per gigabyte goes. And that's why I say that when you have a very small configuration, certainly it works, but you're not going to get the same economies of scale and cost points that you would get with these bigger solutions. So for those of you who can't see this real well, I'm going to just make sure you hear the price points and the capacities I'm talking to. So this is a BlackPearl appliance put into a T950 using IBM's TS1140 tape drives. Spectra supports two different kinds of tape technology in our libraries. One is based on LTO, and one is based on TS1140 technology, which is the enterprise drive that Nate mentioned on our roadmap earlier today. That's what he was referencing. That's a 4 terabyte cartridge and fits within our T-Series tape libraries. This configuration is a 6.4 petabyte uncompressed. Everything here is uncompressed. Everything here is list to make things easy. And you can buy that at 9 cents a gigabyte. A smaller configuration, a 2.4 petabyte solution based on T950 with LTO, just so you can see the mix of the product offerings, is 10 cents a gigabyte. So one of the things you can see is the difference in cost per gigabyte as you go from 2 to 6 petabytes, not real significant. You're talking a penny a gig. You can take advantage of whichever tape technology you want, LTO or the enterprise technology, and again, doesn't make a huge difference today with the technology we have on the cost per gigabyte. And then if you look at a smaller solution, this is one of the departmental libraries Nathan talked about called the T380. And you have a 1.9 petabyte solution, again, ramping down through our product line to give you a feel of the different cost points. That's where you get to 14 cents a gig. So when you see the press release, which we'll give you a copy of at the end of the day so you can see the embargoed announcement, you'll see a price range for our deep storage solutions ranging from 9 to 14 cents a gigabyte. That's list pricing. When you hear us talking about we're anywhere from, that we're a fraction of the cost of other storage solutions, we believe that NTR Verde is amongst the lower cost NAS disk solutions out there. This is our list pricing, and you can see that we're a significantly less expensive solution. So that discussion of can tape be cheaper than disk? Is tape cheaper than disk? In what configurations is it? In deep storage configurations, when you start to get into that certainly petabyte range, tape definitively, and I don't think arguably, is much cheaper than disk. So as we go in, so that's the pricing, and I know you all are trying to take notes, and this may be a little difficult to see. We will share these slides with you at the end of the day, and you'll have a copy of the announcement as well.
You had talked about these new interfaces taking advantage. Oh, sure. Sure. You had talked about the DS3 taking advantage of the S3 storage service. How does the pricing for storage on S3 fit into this, or does it not matter at all?
Sure. I'll definitely speak to that, and that's covered in the press announcement. It's a good question. And it kind of in why we didn't put that in this presentation was simply we have seen the adoption of specifically Glacier. Very interesting technology. Is not actually that broadly adopted yet. So kind of just sharing some personal experiences. When we first went out and started talking to alpha customers about this and thinking, how are we going to message this and position this, we'd say, so are you familiar with Glacier? And most of the customers we talked to didn't even know what we were talking about. So what we found is from just a baseline positioning point, starting with Glacier just didn't make sense because we all know what it is, but it turns out in the rest of the world it's not that broadly adopted. But to answer your question, Glacier is a penny per gigabyte per month for the life of the data. So take your 9 cents a gigabyte solution, you own your storage after 9 months of rental in Glacier. It is effectively how you can compare it. And within Glacier, there's certainly the restrictions around if you intend to use your data soon, you can have penalties for accessing your data within the first several months that it's in the storage. There's no limitations on this solution around, bandwidth to get data into the solution. You can use it as much as you like, and you can pay for it within, approximately a year of renting on a public Glacier-like solution. So from a cost perspective, it makes an enormous amount of sense.
That's all one drive units or two
Question was, are those all single drive units? No, what we did is we put in what seems like a reasonable configuration for the number of drives to stream that capacity of media. And so looked in an active archive environment, how many drives would we need for that much media, and used a reasonable approximation. I think it's 4 that we have built in here. I could be wrong on that though, but it's a reasonable number. And the cost really is, the number of drives in there doesn't change the price point very much, honestly. Yeah, Ray?
What's the throughput for a BlackPearl, and can you have multiple BlackPearl servers?
So let me have you hold that one. The questions that come up that we're going to answer later in the afternoon, I'm going to politely just hold, because there's a lot of those things that we're going to answer as we go through the afternoon.
Molly, I just had a quick question. Is BlackPearl one word or is it 2 words? It seems like it was 2 words.
BlackPearl is 1 word.
It is 1 word with
Yes.
capital P. Okay.
All right, so that's a good baseline on pricing. We're going to talk about some other pricing examples through the day. They're in the press releases. And as we have one-to-one discussions or you're thinking about questions for the panel, we'd be happy to go into this in more detail. So deep storage, certainly we believe, and we believe we can prove very definitively, is the lowest cost storage tier available on the market. It's also the most scalable long-term storage available. It offers extremely fast transfer of large storage objects, which, to answer your question, real short term, is about 500 megabytes per appliance that we can stream. The appliance you can add as you need more throughput, and it really doesn't change the cost per gigabyte significantly. So we can stream as many tape drives and as fast as you want. If you want to add BlackPearls to stream one of those big T-Infinities you saw last night, you added more appliances for throughput. It easily expands in these solutions to exabytes and beyond. A good portion of why we wanted you to see the T-Infinity last night and see the storage capabilities of a deep storage solution is to see that when you put a big tape system behind this, it really can today, with no future technology needed, scale to exabytes of capacity. And it's designed to keep data virtually forever. We're going to talk about exactly what we mean by that as Dave comes up, and exactly what is the software technology that we keep alluding to about media migration and whatnot. Dave's going to talk in more detail about that. So with this, I'm going to hand it over to Dave.
So I'm going to talk about what the appliance is, what we're really selling, and what you're getting as a customer. So one of the things is, does Spectra own the appliance? And it's really 2 answers. Hardware, it's all commodity hardware we buy off the shelf. Software is wholly owned by Spectra. So there is no third-party software that we're using. We developed this solution in-house, so we didn't partner for it or anything like that. So as Molly pointed out, you basically have, in very common in today's world, a cluster of servers over on the left side, not a single server. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Hadoop and other things later in the day. But it's really designed for cluster configurations. You have a BlackPearl. This thing could be 1,000 miles away, like I told you. It could be on your private network, near your web servers, someplace else. And your clients could be in a different facility, and your tape library would be co-located with the BlackPearl unit, most likely. So I'm going to do an example here of, I want to move some data from this clustered configuration to deep storage. So let's take an example of why somebody would want to do this. Hadoop is a very popular clustered storage solution today, being used a lot of places, MapReduce, and it's used in retail. It's very predominant in retail. Stores bring in their data from all their sites, all their little stores, and then they process it using MapReduce. And they do dailies, they do monthlies, they do quarterlies. And after a period of time, and this is what we're seeing, is, well, I'm not allowed to throw any of that data away. It could be 2008 February retail information, but I'm not allowed as a corporation, as an IT person, to throw that data away. Now the chances are, I'm probably not going to use the 2008 retail information ever again, but I'm not going to get rid of it. And so this would be an example of the type of data that you'd want to move to deep archive. Say, I'm going to keep it, but I want to keep it on a cheaper, more permanent storage mechanism. And in conjunction with that, because as you talk about the price, and Molly mentioned the price, the big advantage to me is not just the storage there, but I might now be able to repurpose my cluster servers over here for tomorrow's data. So we're seeing this a lot where people are just buying more and more nodes to their clusters to store next month's data, where they got 5-year-old data that they could easily move to deep storage and essentially free up that space on their current clusters. So what I showed here is that not uncommon that you'd start 4 or 5 jobs on the cluster server, that things would be happening in parallel. So like the yellow squares represent one job and the orange triangles represent another. The client piece, the DS3 client, and we're going to talk about more about clients later, would actually move those objects over into the BlackPearl system. The BlackPearl system contains SSDs in it. They're very high-performance solid-state disk devices, and you can think of them as a cache for the tape system. And the reason why we need a cache is if this is a 100-node cluster, it may be 1 gigabit Ethernet or 10 gigabit Ethernet. But any one node can't drive tape. Tape can do 150 megabytes a second. So we want to break this relationship between one node driving one tape to lots of nodes together with aggregate bandwidth feeding the device, and then that device feeding tape as a second step. And that's really important because if you've been in the tape business, being able to keep the tape drive streaming is a really big thing. You know, if a lot of times I was at an enterprise tape company and we couldn't get our tape drives to perform like low-level tape drives because the host couldn't feed the data fast enough to them. So essentially what happens is this data comes over and it gets put on, there's 4 SSDs in every BlackPearl appliance. And these are enterprise quality SSDs. They will not wear out in the life of the appliance, so I want to make that clear. With regular use or even maximum use. And basically the data gets dropped on those SSDs and resides there. Now before that, we figured out what we want to do, and we've now mounted tapes up. And what happens is that data then comes back into its separate jobs and goes on to separate tapes. So 4 separate jobs, 4 tapes were mounted, the data was brought into the SSDs, sorted out, and then stream to the back end at high performance. The points I want to make again is the aggregate bandwidth of the front could be 500 megabytes a second, but that could be across 100 clustered servers, each doing 5 to 6 megabytes a second. But in the back, we're streaming to 4 tape drives at 120 megabytes a second at rate. So this is a nice drawing, isn't it? My man Perry did this one over here. Good job, Perry. Did it at 8 o'clock last night too. So, because he didn't like the one I had. So,
how is this different conceptually, other than the object-oriented masking that you're doing on the data sets from a VTL?
From VTL,
And could you repeat that question, Dave?
Okay, so the question was, what is different about this than a VTL? So a VTL, VTLs typically, depends on what VTLs you're talking about. So most VTLs are disk-only based. They don't even have tape.
I'm just saying, functionally, a VTL is a cache that normalizes the rate of data transfer to the back-end tape library so I can drive my drives at their rated speed.
And that's another way to do it. Right, and that's one of the advantages. And what I would say is the predominant difference is what you said, John, which is the front-end interface, and that the fact that this interface has nothing to do with tape. I mean, it's a very tape-agnostic interface. I guess we're taking questions. Okay.
I guess.
If you lose the BlackPearl node, you can. How do you want me to answer that question? Yeah.
Buy 2 to start.
Yeah, buy 2 to start. And, there will be other announcements in the future to address that.
So you don't cluster today?
Do we cluster today? No.
So what is the
You
architecture?
guys are really trying to get me in trouble.
So is the data on the SSDs, they stored individually? You're showing 4 data streams. Are they on each SSD, or do you somehow allocate that across the SSDs?
We allocate it across
that makes
the
sense.
SSDs.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is a simplified drawing of what we really do.
Let me see if I can.
See if I can't get me in trouble.
Do I need to cut you off, John? I turned my microphone on.
As I mentioned, we have a 3-year rich roadmap for this product, right? So I talked. I says, we're announcing a piece at a time. This is the piece we're announcing. And obviously, there's a lot of detail to this, but gives you another good reason to come back next year and come see us. And the year after. So good plug for you there, Molly.
Such a tease.
And also, these kinds of questions we'll be happy to cover in the panel after you've seen all the technology. So what we'd like to do is make it so you, because this is just a very small piece of the technology we're going to share today, let us get the technology out there, think about your questions, and that's why we scheduled a panel at the end of the day with a good blend of the speakers from today.
One point I want to make before I get off this slide is we talked about data integrity. There's data integrity from this point to the appliance, and then we write additional data integrity to the back end, and that's important for the next slide that I'll be showing. Actually, I'm going to talk about the hardware first. So what is the hardware? We talked a little bit about 4 SSDs. It's a 2U-high server. The front end of the box can be either InfiniBand or 10 gigabit Ethernet. Most of the customers we're talking to today are 10 gigabit Ethernet. We do have some HPC customers that will probably require InfiniBand. The back end is fiber channel or SAS to the tape system. And you can think of that this box is going to be installed and serviced by Spectra. So most customers aren't going to have to be introduced to the back end at all. We're going to come in, we're going to hook up the tape system, we're going to hook up the networking connections to that tape system and get this running so that from the front end they can do their work. So it's going to be basically a PS offering for us to do that. As I mentioned, it's all our technology, purchased hardware, all owned by software. And it will have a service price just like any of our other products. If there's a problem with the product, you'll call our service department. So it's not going to be, the point I want to make there is it's not going to be a software license that we distribute and that you can run on your own server. It is an appliance that we'll be selling. And the back end, I want to highlight that it's LTFS. So you can move data from BlackPearl to anybody that can read an LTFS tape. You can bring in LTFS tapes from third parties and bring them into the system and present their data back out through the DS3 front end. You import tapes into a bucket. That bucket appears on the front end, and the files that were on those LTFS tapes appear as objects inside that bucket. So we have some media entertainment customers right now. They want to go to post houses. They want to be able to eject tapes, send them to post houses. The product will have that capability to do that. We also have another media entertainment customer that at their foreign sites where they're doing filming, they create LTFS tapes. They'll be able to bring those tapes in and basically import them into the system. This has been talked about a couple times, but I want to kind of go over how it works. Media migration is offered. What happens is you've written LTO5 tapes with BlackPearl, or you've brought in LTO5 tapes that are LTFS formatted from some other source, and now over time you've decided, I don't want LTO5 in my site anymore because LTO7's come out. BlackPearl does their data integrity checks on all the data to validate that nothing has changed, writes it back out to LTO7, and for the front end, it's completely transparent. DS3 sees no difference. If I want to go get objects, I have no awareness that that happened. Yes?
I assume that you could replace the LTO7 with the TS1140?
Yes. Yes. So, in fact, that gets to the next slide, is one of the value props that we're going to be talking about with this product as we bring it out is that it doesn't have to be tape technology at all. So if you start seeing other types of technology emerging, let's say LTO7 is the last of the LTO line, and Hitachi or somebody comes out with a super Blu-ray, 20 terabyte disc, we will have the same capability of supporting that product and putting it behind that. Once again, transparent to the front end. Nothing has changed on the client side. My data is out there in deep archive. Last thing, we will be, and you've heard some of these features, I think John Benson and both Nathan talked about, and Brian talked about some of these features. Lifecycle management will be integrated in. So as an example, if lifecycle management says this piece of media should no longer be used, it notifies the BlackPearl unit of that, and we basically take it off the list as a usable media candidate.
does it do anything with the data on that tape?
We haven't decided that. Right now, it will not use the tape again. It is very possible in the future that we could actually read the contents off, move it to another tape, and eject that tape.
Well, what would the user do with the information that was on that tape? You'd have to get it back somehow.
Right. So typically, media lifecycle management tells you about upcoming problems, not when they're a disaster.
Oh, I
so,
ignored that.
yeah. So what?
I ignored that warning.
Yeah.
I said it's a long time. Don't
Right. So because it's tightly integrated, it won't be a human function. We'll actually pull the data out. It will tell us, hey, this piece of media is suspect, and we will then not use that piece of media again as a BlackPearl candidate.
Hey, Dave, I know we're not taking questions,
But we are.
if you do, could you repeat them?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, so yeah, he asked about media lifecycle management. Media lifecycle management, because of this integration, will notify the BlackPearl of media status, and we will take corrective action or not use those pieces of media again going forward. It won't be an operator intervention type thing like it is today.
This isn't a question about BlackPearl. Is media lifecycle management, isn't that a feature I can buy on the library
Yes.
today?
Yes. And
So is a decision being made at some point between what value-add software is going to reside on the library and what value-add software is going to reside on BlackPearl?
Right. So, and the question was, doesn't that exist today in the library? Yes, we sell media lifecycle management, and we provide statistics to users on tape cartridges, and they can do what they would like with those. With this system, because it's tightly integrated with BlackPearl, it will tell BlackPearl, do not use this piece of media again.
Can I interrupt you, Dave?
Yeah.
You didn't say anything wrong. You're still doing good. Just a couple things I wanted to mention. Media lifecycle management is a free option on our libraries. We encourage everyone to use it, so it's not a charged option. But this is one of the pieces of magic of BlackPearl that we're offering is lots and lots of people, when we came out with media lifecycle management, said, well, that's great. You can notify you have a bad tape or you're going to have a bad tape. Why do I as a user have to be involved? And what that meant was we at Spectra had to get Commvault or NetBackup or FileTech to say, I'm not going to use that tape anymore based on the Spectra Media Lifecycle Management database. So it would take an integration of our Media Lifecycle Management with an application, because that application is the only one who knows where the data is. That's actually one of the great things is now you have the data mover well integrated with MLM, so we're not just raising alerts, we're actually taking action on them.
Yeah.
But he said that you're going to do LTFS on the back end, which means that the cartridges are self-describing and they're linked to the barcode on the cartridge. So if I get a message from your media lifecycle management that cartridge barcode number XYZ is failing and needs to be replaced, I know exactly what cartridge to replace. I don't need to consult Commvault or anybody else, right?
Yeah, so John, that's a good point. He asked about Commvault and others. There is no other package that's required here. We're doing everything.
Okay.
So, data scrubbing, I think Brian mentioned data scrubbing. This is where we actually look at the data and validate whether it's correct. This needs to be done on a regular basis for an archive to see if there's any deterioration. Single point of management, you'll see us move toward where there's one pane of glass to manage both the whole library complex with the BlackPearl system. And improved tape drive diagnostics. One of the biggest issues any tape drive company has, I worked at a fairly big one before Spectra as well as Spectra, has a similar problem, which is we get a lot of tape drives back from the field that don't have failures. And the reason is because the backup app, signaled it, or the backup didn't complete, and the user took or the service person took the drive out because the backup didn't complete. Now that we own the tape drives behind us, we can add a lot more diagnostics and use some of our current diagnostic capability on tape drives. To Molly's point, we have these features in our libraries, but trying to get the third parties like Commvault to support them is almost impossible because they don't want to support a specific vendor information. Yes, Ray.
That's a good question. Do you create multiple copies of an object? Or is it a single copy only?
No, single copy only. You would make 2 copies from the client if you wanted 2 copies.
Do you offer client server software, or is it something?
Yes, that's coming up.
And could you repeat that again real quick?
Yeah, the last one was, do we offer client software? And that's a whole part of the project that's coming up. Yes.
Is there any concept of data deduplication or compression in this?
So the question was about data deduplication or compression. We support compression on the tape drive. So the numbers that Molly gave for dollars per gigabyte did not take into account compression. Depending on the site, depending on the type of data, you can expect that you're going to get 1.5 to 2.5x compression, and that would mean those numbers would drop substantially because of that per gigabyte. Okay, so with that, it's the hardware.
So you'll be hearing a lot of the pieces of the story rolled out through the rest of the afternoon. There's a few things here that really, what BlackPearl combined with DS3 has offered us is a change in the data center and how people can access deep storage, access tape libraries. In the past, it was SCSI and fiber channel based. Now they're using RESTful simple storage services and DS3 to access the storage system. Now instead of having to figure out what application is going to move files to the deep storage system, they have the option to use a file management application, an Active Archive, HSM, an asset manager of some sort, or they can use objects directly to the tape libraries. One thing really we want to emphasize as we go through the afternoon is we don't see the entire market moving from traditional backup. We don't see an entire market moving from active archives. This is an additional option that as you look at the data center and how people use storage, there's really three ways. And object storage and being able to use RESTful interfaces to access storage has been limited to just disk historically. Now they have the deep storage tier as an option in those environments. Tape now has the ability to work in all of those environments. Another big piece here, and there's a lot of technology around this in the discussions that have been coming up, that in the past it's always been proprietary data formats that have moved to tape. And even as LTFS was introduced, it was an open format, but you still need an application to move the data to the LTFS file system on the tape libraries. One of the things we're able to do here is have it be completely open, that if you look at implementation of any of the applications who are using LTFS, use an Active Archive application, for example. They can write in their own format and do smart things with their data. They can also write in LTFS format. But you still have all the intelligence somewhere about which file is on which tape, how is the library being managed, that you have to have an application manage. One of the things BlackPearl offers is all that stuff, all the intelligence around inventory. If the robot tries to mount a tape and it doesn't work, the retries, that still has to be done by someone. And that's the kind of stuff that we're offering in addition to just writing into a standard LTFS format. On the high-cost middleware, one of the things here that is really interesting is with the introduction of BlackPearl, you can reduce the amount of middleware you need. You don't necessarily need an incredibly robust software application to move data to tape. But there's an enormous amount of functionality in those applications that BlackPearl doesn't have. So if you went and looked at SGI's DMF, one of the big supercomputing applications, and all the capabilities it has to offer a clustered file system, to migrate data across different storage tiers, all the features people want about clustering and those types of things. BlackPearl doesn't necessarily have all those features. The stuff that you've built into a file migrator or to a backup application over the last 20 years, we're not trying to say that BlackPearl has all of that. What we're introducing is one, a new technology option on a way to have tape introduced into this deep storage tier for these RESTful applications. But two, it's a huge shift, and we're going to talk about this more as we talk about clients, that the intelligence about the data is in the client, and I mentioned this earlier today. There's client and there's server architecture with RESTful appliances, or RESTful architectures. BlackPearl's the server, and the server in all RESTful environments is responsible for managing the storage. BlackPearl does a lot of really clever stuff around storage, media migration, open formats, all the things Dave is talking about. How the data gets there, if you want 2 copies of your data, if you want a copy for offsite, that's done in the client. So the responsibilities are different than in a typical storage environment where you think about a big array from some major storage vendor, having to do it all in the array. One of the big differences about RESTful architectures is the responsibilities are divided differently. So it's just a different way to think about things. This certainly enables tape to be used for the masses, that applications that create an enormous amount of data, and I don't know the right number, some of the folks in the audience track this. There's a lot of data in RESTful architectures today that just simply don't have a way to get to tape. That's the market that we're targeting for BlackPearl. We don't see this displacing our Active Archive Alliance and the need for active archives. We don't see this displacing backup and compliance or disaster recovery. There's a lot of data out there. Just for the sake of conversation, I don't know if this is the right number. Let's say half the data out there is being stored in RESTful object stores and half is being stored in other areas. This is the first time tape has been able to access that other half of the industry. So this isn't really displacement technology. It's opening up an entire new market for us. So with that, I just want to summarize with the BlackPearl environment to make sure it's really clear to you all. The left-hand side of the screen here, the data creation to DS3 is what we talked about this morning, that a client is going to select which data from this cluster is going to be moved to the DS3 interface. That's done at the client level, and we're going to talk about that next. So we'll talk about clients in just a minute. So once that data is selected and moved to DS3, that's when BlackPearl, as the server, takes over doing clever stuff with the storage. So BlackPearl does SSD caching to optimize the throughput to tape. It manages the object catalog, so it has all that metadata information about the objects, where the objects are stored, those types of things. It does the tape library management, so this is part of why you need DS3, but you also need something like BlackPearl, is you still need something that's going to make the decisions around which tape's going to go in which drive and map to which object. We do all that within BlackPearl. There's a lot of intelligence built into the BlackPearl. When we say this is a software announcement, this is why. Lots of people have asked us, yeah?
Are you still not taking questions? Yeah.
Well, we just want to make sure we get through the whole story, because we know you're going to ask questions about clients and stuff, but go ahead, George.
Well, the object catalog, is that protected somehow? Is that copied to tape or something?
We're still sorting that part out exactly. Let Dave answer that.
The object catalog.
The exact method, let Dave talk to that.
Yeah, so there's going to be several. So he asked about the object catalog and the protection of it. So the object catalog is a very important part of the data set, because obviously if you were to lose it, what would happen is you'd have to load up every LTFS tape and read the format off the tape. We want to prevent that at all cost. So there's several things we're doing with the catalog. The first one is the catalog is mirrored across the SSDs. So it's got 2 copies, so SSD failure won't lose the catalog. The second thing we're doing is we're taking snapshots of the catalog. So in the event that a customer said, oh, my catalog's all messed up, we could go back in time to one of the snapshots. We're actually using ZFS inside the appliance for that function. And then the third will be things like offsite copies for tape. So we'll write tape, or we'll even possibly write to another BlackPearl system that the customer's bought at a different location. So,
just based on the comment that you just made about BlackPearl being there for RESTful data stores, should that kind of software that you have there be identifying in the arrow that is where the RESTful data store is coming from?
Which arrow are you looking at, the purple one or the orange one?
The purple.
And what the question, I'm not sure I understand the question.
The data is being passed through that
is the RESTful data. That's correct. Yeah, so the question was, where is the RESTful data? And it absolutely is right here. Right. The fact that, and Dave mentioned this, the part where we're moving objects to deep storage, and the fact that that's connecting to a fiber channel or a SAS device, customers don't need to worry about that. Once we install the BlackPearl, their RESTful data moves across 10 gig E, for example, to BlackPearl. Everything else is done in the background for them, exactly.
Yeah, and going back to Nathan's presentation, that interface there is HTTP actually, or HTTPS if you want encryption. Yep. So it's very much like you're used to on the web today.
Yes, Ray?
Is the library shareable?
Yes.
Non-BlackPearl?
Yeah, the question is the library shareable? And that's an important part of the strategy for sure. Any Spectra Logic tape library today can have a BlackPearl partition in it and use it for, 10% of the data is RESTful object-based BlackPearl generated data. 90% or 50% can be active archive, and the remaining 40% can be for backup. So yeah, absolutely, any Spectra library today can have a deep storage partition enabled. All right, so another question we've had is a lot of why doesn't Spectra have an LTFS solution? You know, we're well known for being the evangelists of tape. We're well known for being the innovators of tape. You know, we're out there beating the tape drum all the time, and certainly we've gotten a lot of questions about why didn't we come out with an LTFS appliance. And really the reason is we are working on this project, and this project is a much broader scope. We do believe in the LTFS format for all the reasons that LTFS is popular. We just went a different route on how we're leveraging LTFS and looking at and putting it into a much broader value add application that opens up new markets for our storage systems that were not accessible to us today. Dave talked about data security, and really I just wanted to make sure you guys had this summary of what's inside BlackPearl that makes it an intelligent appliance that helps to enable this deep storage tier, and the integration with Bluescale, the integration with our tape library functionality, the things like media lifecycle management, that because BlackPearl is now managing the data comes into BlackPearl. BlackPearl's picking which tapes, keeping track in the object locations, which object is on which tape. Now finally media lifecycle management can be integrated with the data movement, so when we alert to a bad tape, the data mover can take care of, I'm going to just move that content over to a different tape, and the user doesn't even have to be involved, which was definitely the goal of media lifecycle management when we introduced it. All these systems are designed to scale. There's just kind of, you can see grayed in, that you can add additional BlackPearl appliances as you need more throughput. You can certainly expand your tape libraries, like Chris talked about at NASCAR, that when they outgrew their T950, we have it very easy to scale all of our storage solutions as capacities grow, so that longevity of us being able to do media migration is very good. From a hardware perspective, the scalability to add capacity and throughput over time is built in there as well.